So Wendy, as an urban planner or just planning company, what do you think about high-speed rail and the trade-off between, the tracks and versus the transportation moving people with less impact on the environment?
Can you hear me? Okay, good question. So, I think that we have got to be able to become more multimodal in our state. When I go travel across the country, we haven't done all that as well. I mean, we've got great massive roads, but I do believe we got to become more multimodal in how we do that. I get an argument for sure sometimes when, you look at very rural land and being able to protect that, and we certainly get it. A lot of what I've seen, and we challenged some of the design on some of the things to making sure that we are being able to be very thoughtful in how that is built, that it doesn't have long-term impacts. I think overall, Texas is a state that we eventually need that. We are growing a lot, and when you look at the miles traveled on some of our freeways, we need to be thinking that way because we've seen more and more growth coming here. So I definitely think that it is something that I would like to see us, I'd like to see us get there and be able to promote and support that in a way that, again, protects that land.
I think we had a question up in the top corner.
So with the Trinity River project and all that trash I saw on the river, it gets me thinking about low impact development. And I don't know if you're familiar with that stormwater management method, but it basically captures water high in the landscape, filters it, and ensures that we don't have a lot of pollutants and trashes in our waterways. And I guess I would hope that you could encourage the city of Dallas to be more mindful about its stormwater management, because it's not like recreational water, but it goes into our coasts. And in some cases, it's part of the drinking water supply because Dallas gets so much water from its lakes. So just something to add to your agenda, perhaps.
Is that me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll address that on a number of levels. One is that our Trinity Coalition is doing all we can to interact with the government officials that make decisions like what you're talking about. The level that we are mostly at, though, is the public citizen. Individuals who have lifestyles that have some way, whether they know it or not, are polluting our river. And like Dale Harris, my partner, says that almost all the pollution, all the trash in the Trinity River starts in your backyard. So we are undertaking a campaign, hopefully with the EPA funding, to, number one, make people aware that they are part of the problem. They can help clean up the river. Second is that we have proposed to the EPA that we put together a large number of community groups that will clean up the trash using the trash booms that you saw on the screen up there, to clean up the trash in the tributaries, the creeks that go through their neighborhoods and then connect to the Trinity River somewhere. And they may not even know where it connects to the Trinity River, it gets there. And so we're going to use the EPA grant funding, if we get that, to set up these trash booms, talk to the neighborhood associations, talk to the paddling community, and to get them out there cleaning up the trash, but more importantly, connecting their lives to the Trinity River and understanding that they can do something about it. And hopefully by doing that, we'll have a large enough public force to go to City Hall meetings or Water Department meetings to accomplish what you're doing. But we've got to get people connected to the Trinity River. That's the first step, and that's what we're doing. Yeah.
Steve Evans with EarthX. Steve, with the signature park that's going in next to downtown Dallas, hopefully, and the Great Trinity Forest to the south, on the north side, is there still an effort to rewild that area? Mm. And as a follow-up question, is there possibility that the National Park Service will expand past just the paddling trail and own part of the Trinity Forest?
Well, that's a big question, Steve, and I'll say this, that I have been absolutely amazed at the cooperation the National Park Service is giving us. They are so hungry to get into urban areas because they've already used up all of the, there's only one Grand Canyon, there's one Teton, there's one Yosemite. And they have an initiative that we are now sort of on the bullseye of, where we're the fourth largest metropolitan area in the country. 7.5 million people live here. And our project is going right through the heart of the DFW area, passing Fort Worth, passing Dallas. And so I'm really, I'm an optimist by nature, so maybe I shouldn't be about this, but I really think that the experience that we have had in working with each of these local governments, 10 local governments in less than 3 months signed a letter from their city attorney saying they supported bringing the national park brand into their area. And so our next step then is to take what you're talking about, and I'm involved in the rewilding project of inside the levees, and that's it's a great movement there. And I really think that if we get the national park brand on some of these things, then a lot of the political forces just go away, because that brand is so strong. They get 100 million hits a year on their website. And I really think that if we can get the national park brand on not only this river, but all of the parks that are connected to it, there are 50 parks connected to the Trinity River, then we will be by far the largest urban nature park in the world, and it'll have the national park brand on it. And all of a sudden, Dallas's image around the planet changes, and the people that are living here that are getting in the way of some of these things, I think will move aside, because the force is going to be so strong. Yeah.
JC Tosh, Texas A&M Forest Service. This is for you, Steve. You kind of mentioned it briefly, just talking about awareness, but is there anything that Trinity River Coalition is doing specific for conservation education? So looking at curriculum or specific regional tailored content that you're getting into schools and other community centers?
We certainly are. The question is about education and public awareness, and as part of our EPA grant, and all this is fresh on my mind because we're applying for the grant. It's due in about 10 days. So one of the main components of our proposal to the EPA is that we are going to put signs up at every bridge. There's 75 bridges that cross the Trinity River here in the DFW area. And we're going to put a sign up there that says, "Don't trash your Trinity." And we're going to have our website right under it, trinitycoalition.org. On that website, we are going to have a primer on trashing the Trinity that we will then teach people on our website, and then we're going to take that to the schools so they can teach the kids, or businesses can take it into their employee groups to start educating people about we're the problem. You wonder, the Trinity River is so dirty, I don't want to get in. Why is it so dirty? It's not the wastewater treatment plants, it's us. And so we're big into educating people about that and getting them on the river so they will connect their lives to it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We have a question up here.
Hi. Just a quick thought for you, Steve, that an additional approach there, I think, going back to what you first said about people's awareness of the Trinity, is to encourage people to touch the Trinity, like go actually be present with it. I appreciate what you're saying. And Jay, a question for you, going back to, you mentioned several countries around the world where it's becoming normal to prescribe outdoor activity. What will it take for that to become normal in America?
I think that's the biggest thing that, right now, it's really sharing the word, sharing the data. I think, one of the biggest areas we've had is cost savings. I think when we look at, we can keep people from having heart attacks, we can keep them, lower cancer rates, lower death. That's a pretty strong message. And so I think really making sure that message is becoming clear, that the connection between health and nature is clear. If you go to Japan, there's no doubt. You talk to people and they're like, yeah, of course, we know that. You go to parts of Europe, it's very clear. But I think you come to the US, it's almost like this hidden thing that people go, oh, if you mention it, yeah, maybe, but no one takes it seriously as like this actually reduces your blood pressure, your cortisol, et cetera. So I think that's just, the more we can speak and really get that message out, I think that's the first step to trying to get things so we actually get people where we're prescribing nature and we're getting people out on a regular basis.
Reagan.
Lisa, I wanted to ask you, have any other cities contacted you, or towns out in West Texas, I'm thinking, but anywhere, contacted El Paso Water to learn about what you're doing and how you're being so successful?
We have lots and lots of visitors at our desalination facility, and that's probably where we get the most questions and inquiries and things like that. Anaí Padilla serves on the task force that TWDB has, Texas Water Development Board has, on conservation. And so there's lots of conversations and dialogue that happens in that circle about what we're doing. And she probably would know even more in terms of the inquiries that we get on conservation. We interestingly do have a lot of dialogue with other desert cities, because desert cities in particular are facing the same or similar challenges of resource constraints over time. And so lots of conversations with California, with Las Vegas, with Arizona. So probably there's even more dialogue that happens ad hoc with fellow desert communities.
Well, your project is one of the perfect examples of a Texan by Nature project that we hope will be replicated many times.
We hope so, and we'd be happy to be a resource.
Thank you.
This is a question for the whole panel and maybe the room, but as we talk about education from Steve for pockets of places near the Trinity River and A&M, we have a PhD that is learning about new research. Is there anybody that's considering going to a body like TEA and saying we should be teaching our youth conservation techniques, we should be talking about sustainability at the elementary, middle, and high school level? Because the people in this room can cause change if we all go to a body like that and talk to somebody like Laura Bush, who is a champion for education. But that needs to happen because we're talking about landowners turning over. Well, who are they going to turn it over to? The kids in our schools right now. So I think it should be a big push for the people in this room to start discussing education at a Texas level to get conservation wranglers graduating every year and not just coming together one time at this conference. So anybody up there have thoughts?
I'd actually like to comment on that. So we are seeing a lot of activity in approaching the TEA and trying to get TEKS-aligned curriculum for outdoor classrooms. One of our conservation wranglers in 2017 was the Learning Landscapes Collaborative down in the Rio Grande Valley. And the gentleman who is part of that project, Mr. Alan Williams, has worked very closely with the TEA in putting classroom materials together both to train the teachers and to make the curriculum available for those K through 8 students as they learn about pollinator habitat, growing food, being in outdoor gardens and outdoor classrooms. So we're seeing a lot of movement in that direction. Texas Children in Nature is another resource where there is activity around working with TEA and other education bodies across the state to get that curriculum into the schools. And do any of you guys want to add on to that?
That's a great point.
Thanks.
Hi, Lisa, I have a question for you. In talking about the multifamily units, the apartment complexes that you were working with the one developer, what are the similarities or what are the common denominators that you were seeing, particularly in El Paso, with the really successful apartment complexes versus the ones that had a bit more challenges?
So often the successful ones are the newer ones that reading more current plumbing codes and just, I think as they're making investments, they're choosing more water efficient fixtures and things like that. There's also irrigation. I think that over time, we've been able to shift the culture in El Paso from having green lawns to having much more water smart or xeriscape types of landscaping. And so, when we look at the poorer performers, they tend to be older. They tend to probably not have very efficient irrigation or more of those grass areas. And we don't want to discourage grass areas, but there's a way to mix in grass with water smart and others to make a more water smart landscape. So those are the big differences that are standing out.
Yeah, I'd like to mention one of the actions or reactions being taken in the Houston area for educational purposes. Someone mentioned outdoor classrooms, but also in reaction to Hurricane Harvey, incidents like that, and that's putting in pocket prairies. and schools, outdoor, I mean, the regiment in this, it creates so many opportunities for teaching students about agronomy, about water, about air, all the neat natural resources. So I want to ask the group if y'all considered the pocket prairie concept. It's easy to talk about trees and water and waterways, but it's not very sexy to talk about putting in more grass, but maybe wildflowers.
Mm-hmm. I don't know that this is the right panel around grass, but Wendy, did you want to take that one?
Well, I just think, I think from the standpoint of the concept, not so much the specifics of it, but the concept of looking at ways we can get more, green space, open space, outdoor space. I mean, all of that, I think, in a very built environment, then I think is something certainly that we're looking at from a long-range perspective.
Yeah, the easier access to nature you have, the better for everybody. So it's a great idea.
And particularly in the Houston area with Katy Prairie in particular. So Katy High School has worked to do some of the pocket prairies, and they're doing a lot of education with their students. And if there are folks in the room who don't know about that, they actually have a Texan by Nature certification. You can go on our website and read about that project and the work that they're doing, the benefit regarding storm mitigation, and then the education for the students as well.
And Jay, you mentioned about the hospitals. I mean, the pocket prairie
Yeah. Yep. That's a perfect example. It's got multiple uses, right? So it's if you're doing flood control, but you're also getting people exposed to green space, which is perfect.
I think we have time for one more. Elaine?
Lisa, I noticed on one of your slides you spoke about desalination. Is that desalination of underground water from that about a 1,200-foot water zone, that brackish water that people are starting to drill for?
There are two types of desalination, as you know. One is coastal desalination, and the other is inland. And what's perhaps unknown about El Paso is that we have these vast brackish aquifers. And so this is a way of turning that formerly undrinkable resource into a valuable water source for the utility. So yes, it is inland desalination from brackish underground water.
Thank you.
Great. Well, again, thank you guys so much for your thoughts on planning and things that each of us can take back to utilize within our organizations and just being citizens within our own communities. So if you would join me in thanking the panel once again.